It looks like we've got a bunch more Chaos leaks dropping today. It looks like the Daemonettes of Slaanesh might genuinely be a force to fear in melee once again. Hello and welcome back to Warspets Tactics, where today I thought we'd keep up with the demon news and leaks. A bunch of interesting profiles have been revealed this week, perhaps most interestingly some new stats for the Daemonettes, but also some incredibly blendy looking Slaanesh Chariots and a souped up profile for the burning Chariot of Tzeentch. As previously, these leaks are coming out via a trio of leakers over on Discord and a YouTube channel called Wallace. As always, a big thank you to Misters Wallace, Trout and Corkin for bringing us some interesting things to talk about. It does seem that they've pretty much confirmed that they've got access to playtest rules from their latest video. Broadly speaking, it sounds like the profiles will be fairly accurate, though it's certainly possible that Games Workshop might make some balance adjustments before the final version of the book goes to print. It sounds like they're going to be leaking things weekly, both on the Chaos Demons Discord server and over on Wallace's YouTube channel, and there's quite an interesting video that's just dropped discussing the Slaanesh changes, and a discussion over which things they think are going to be strong or not. I'll link Wallace's video down in the video description, and he's also a contributing member of the Warhammer Chaos page, a really good Chaos resource for strategy and tactics. In any case, for the actual news that we've got today, we've got a new Daemonette profile, profiles for each of the Slaanesh Chariots, and also some souped up numbers for the burning Chariot of Tzeentch. Out of any of the profiles, I think that the Daemonettes are perhaps the most interesting drop. Currently in 40k, I'd say they're perhaps one of the best Horde-style demon units. Even with Toughness 3, they are at least somewhat hard to chew through with a 5+ invul save for 7 points. They're fast and get where they need to, and they are objective secured as well, so are quite good for Slaanesh detachments alongside Keepers of Secrets. Still though, their damage output is still a bit underwhelming even when they're buffed. They're normally Strength 3 and 2 attacks with AP 1 and extra AP on 6s. Typically they tend to deal chip damage to whatever they hit in combat, though not outright remove things. The new profile, however, is looking significantly more threatening. Apparently a theme of the book is that basically each of the lesser demons are getting a lot scarier, though they might be able to be fielded in fewer numbers in terms of big squads and cost some more points. For the Daemonettes profile, they still remain movement 7. They hit on 3s, are strength 4, toughness 3, a big 4 attacks now, 1 wound, leadership 8, and a 4+ and 5+ demon save. I believe if this is the same as the ones that they'd written down before, then the 4+ would have been against range and the 5+ against melee. I don't think that they actually confirmed that in the video though, so I guess it's not impossible it could be the other way around. In any case, in raw damage they do have some pretty meaty buffs there. Going up to base strength 4 is really quite nice. It won't help against toughnesses 5 and 8, but against just about everything else is a really big deal. You'd be wounding guardsmen on 3s, space marines on 4s, and even toughness 7 vehicles on 5s. What's more, getting 2 attacks over their base profile is massive as well. They could get 3 attacks base if you fielded them in big squads before, but now you can just field them in fairly small squads, and still have them be pretty darn lethal. The AP on their claws looks like it's taken a similar side grade to the Genestealer ones. Previously you'd be getting rending attacks on 6s, so getting AP -4 rather than AP -1. Now that rule is apparently completely gone, but they just get AP -2 on all their attacks instead. In general, I think that shakes out to a slight buff overall. The AP change might be a little bit worse than previous if they're tangling with toughness 8 things, but they're not really going to be very efficient against them either way. I did a little bit of math hammer comparing the damage output for 10 models. Previously, a squad of Daemonettes would have killed around 5 or 6 guardsmen, 1 space marine, or about 2 wounds to a toughness 7 vehicle. With +1 strength, 4 attacks, and AP -2, they'll now kill around about 17 guardsmen, just over 3 marines, or around 6 wounds to a toughness 7 vehicle. Basically, between the 3 buffs against a wide variety of targets, they'll typically be causing around about triple damage, which is pretty mental. Kind of nice to see them just going from a bit of a chaff unit to bog down the enemy into something that can genuinely punch up. On top of that, having a 4+ unignorable invul save against ranged attacks will be pretty nice. A little bit tougher as well, but I would guess that they're going to be going up in points, maybe somewhere between 8 and 11 points perhaps, rather than the 7 points that they are now. Exactly where Games Workshop prices them along that spectrum and how many other cool buffs they can get from outside of their profile might depend on whether or not they're efficient. I must admit though, just on the base numbers, it is looking rather good for the Daemonettes, hopefully dangerous enough to make the Dark Prince proud. Otherwise, there were a few other little tidbits. Apparently their unit size will be capped at 20 models, where they were rumouring that some of the other demons might be capped at 10. They look like they still might be one of the best units to hoard up in the demon army. And apparently Slaanesh in general will be able to get access to rather a lot of buffing rules. They specifically mentioned that there will be a way to get them extra AP, and that the Herald buff will do something different now. It no longer gives them +1 strength, which I guess is baked into their profile by default. Overall though, I think it broadly looks like good news, decent buffs to an army that really needs it, good to have the core troops of any faction looking usable. Next up, we've got the fast-moving blending engines of destruction that are the Slaanesh Chariots. There's actually 3 different builds that you can make from this same chariot kit. The regular Seeker Chariot, the Hellflare, and the Exalted Seeker Chariot. The regular one is kind of the default build, with the lady on the back with the whips and the 2 steeds. The Hellflare is the one with the great big blending lawnmower down the middle. You don't really want to get in the way of that if you're an infantry squad. And the Exalted Seeker Chariot is the really big one that you can make, basically combining 2 different Slaanesh Chariot kits and making one really big demon engine of destruction. In general, as demon chariots go, they're maybe not unusable. They're really cheap and you can clog up the board pretty well with them, and they are at least a little bit painful to remove due to having invul saves. Still though, perhaps not super threatening on any of their damage profiles against anything but light infantry. First up on their new profiles, there's the regular Seeker Chariots, a 14-inch move, hitting on 3s, strength 4 and toughness 6, with 7 wounds, 10 attacks, leadership 8, and a save at 4+ at range and in melee. Currently it's 60 points. Of course we don't know whether or not it might take a points bump with these increased abilities, but if it remains fairly cheap then it's going to be pretty threatening. Durability is a really big win, +1 toughness to toughness 6 will help it out against things like heavy bolters, +1 wound is always nice to have, and a better save going from a 5+ invul to essentially a 4+ super invul will really help it out against any dedicated anti-tank weapons that might often want to shoot this thing's way. Never mind the toughness, just with the invul and the extra wound alone, you've added around about 60% extra durability to the unit, which is pretty significant. Damage-wise, the previous Seeker Chariot was 5 attacks. This one has the new Daemonette Claws profile at strength 4 and AP -2, but gets double the attacks that the previous one did, all the way up to 10. Then on top of that, you get the Steed's Lashing Tongues that get 4 attacks at strength 4 AP 0, plus a mortal wound impact hit mechanism of some sort. They didn't say exactly how it would work, but it sounds like it might be something like D3 mortal wounds on a 4+ on the charge or something like that. Apparently it averages out to close to 1 mortal wound. And then finally you also get to attack with the whips, apparently 4 attacks at 6-inch strength 4, AP 0 and damage 1. Basically this thing looks more dangerous and tougher, but its role hasn't really changed perhaps too much. It still looks like it's going to be wanting to hunt infantry that are toughness 4 or worse. I guess at least the extra AP -2 does mean it could threaten Space Marines a little bit better. If they remain cheap though, they do look like they could be a seriously annoying little unit to remove with that defensive profile. Next up is the great big blending lawnmower that is the Hellflare. That one's basically got the same profile but is 8 attacks rather than 10. I don't know how many extra special rules it's going to get. Maybe it won't get the mortal wound impact hits and perhaps might miss out on the steed attacks, but apparently the Axle's going to get a whole ton of extra damage, usually an extra 4 attacks at strength 6, AP -2 and damage 2, and then it gets another +4 on the charge. It kind of feels like it's trying to take a leaf out of the Death Guard Fleshmower drones book, in just a very nice general purpose profile that's going to go through heavy infantry with ease. Sounds like it'd be quite effective against Space Marines, more so than the regular Chariot. According to Mr. Wallace's video, this was actually adjusted in playtesting from getting just +9 attacks all the time, which apparently was too much. It still does sound pretty effective to be honest, and if these are all the rules that they have, then it does seem like it will be my preferred choice over the regular Chariot. Much better to have some general purpose damage output rather than a few extra random special rules. As well as that, supposedly this one also gets a -1 to hit at range as well. Very nice in addition to the rest of those durability boosts. Finally we've got the Exalted Seeker Chariot, the really big one that you get by sticking 2 kits together. They didn't really go into all that much detail about this one, but apparently it'd be 12 wounds rather than 7 for the regular Chariot, and 16 attacks rather than 10. Kind of depends on how much they both cost to see which one's the most efficient if that's the case. I wouldn't put it past it for the Exalted one to have some extra buffing rules, or some sort of command abilities. Overall though, depending on the points cost, Hellflares are potentially looking very interesting when the Codex drops. Finally, last but not least, and I think one of the more fun kits out of the entire Chaos Demons range, is the Burning Chariot of Tzeentch. This one's a leak from earlier in the week via Mr. Trout on the Chaos Demons Discord, and it does look like a solid improvement to the Burning Chariot, maybe the rules just a little bit more subtle in terms of their upgrade power, compared with the almost doubling of damage and survivability that all the Slaanesh Chariots got. Statline wise, it's got a 14-inch move, hits on 4s in melee and 3s at range, strength and toughness of 6, 9 wounds to please Tzeentch, 4 attacks, leadership 8, and a 4+ save both at range and in melee, a demon save, so basically a super invul. The 4+ saves maybe aren't quite as much a direct upgrade on this one, as it already was a Demon of Tzeentch. It did already get a 4+ invul even in the previous book. Still though, a small durability boost, +1 toughness, and +1 wound certainly helps. A little bit tankier and annoying to take down, and it's got +1 attack and +1 strength as well to help out in melee, though it still sounds like its melee attacks are just going to be made using a basic close combat weapon as opposed to anything fancy, so arguably those stats don't matter quite as much. As before, it's got its great big exalted flamer on the back, and that's going to be able to fire with its 2 different fires of Tzeentch. There's the choice of the pink fire or the blue fire. One of them is 18 inches, heavy 3 at strength 9, AP 4 and damage 2. Quite good for frying a few space marines or putting a few wounds on a heavy vehicle or something. And the profile is kind of unchanged compared with the previous. The only differences are that it doesn't appear to key off their strength or anything. And it's gone from D3 random damage into 2 set damage, which is a fairly common update throughout 9th edition. Otherwise, its anti-infantry flamer mode has got a fair bit better. That one's 12 inches and 2d6 shots at strength 6, AP 2, damage 1. Previously that was only d6 shots and was rather underwhelming for an anti-infantry gun. This is now a lot more generally threatening to things like big squads of guard or orcs or something. Zoom this into range and pour out some warp fire, and you're killing something like 4 or 5 orc boys on average, or around about 6 guardsmen. It's a bit more of a mixed role thing, as it's still okay in combat as well. It gets 4 attacks, presumably with the scribes and maybe with the flamer. They all hit at strength 6, AP 0 and damage 1. And the screamers also chip in with the bonus 6 attacks, just the same as they do at the moment. Strength 6, AP 3 and damage 2, though it seems that they still hit on 4s. Not bad though, it really does depend on the points and whether or not it's got any other fun special rules or stratagems and things as to whether or not it's looking particularly efficient in the new book. Finally, apparently the Chariot hands out a couple of buffs and debuffs. It gives a +1 strength to Flamer's aura within 6 inches. I wonder if that might be a rule that's keying off the Exalted Flamer in general. Currently you have the option to field it both on the ground as an individual character unit or mounted on this Chariot. Maybe Exalted Flamers will now amp up the fire of regular Flamers of Tzeentch. Giving them +1 strength is very nice, going from strength 4 to strength 5. So maybe this will be the way of getting their better warp fire now, if the Heralds really are rumoured to do something different. Lastly, it seems that the blue horrors still are able to keep up their irritating chant to stop enemy psychic quite as well. It's now got a -1 to cast penalty within 12 inches of it, a fair bit better than the 9 inches that it had before. Could make things a little bit awkward for psychic armies like Grey Knights or Thousand Suns if you do happen to throw a few of these up the board to annoy the enemy. There's currently no mention that you have to pay points to upgrade to those horrors, so maybe you'll just be able to field them off the core datasheet now, and not have to pay a 5-point upgrade if you want to put them on the model. So overall, a fair amount of fun stuff for the demons there. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who'd really like their Daemonettes to be viable en masse. I feel like with that kind of profile they are looking pretty interesting. Still maybe somewhat fragile just to taking chip damage from random small arms and being punched back in close combat if there's anything left. But hopefully if they do have a few interesting buffs on the go, they might be able to just obliterate whatever they can catch, and get across the board pretty quickly to be able to catch it in the first place. As I mentioned earlier, please check out Wallace and Corkin's video that's linked down in the video description, discussing all of these new changes. If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly keep the regular news and rumours coming for Warhammer 40k. I do tend to try and keep on top of the 40k news, whether it's coming from Games Workshop or elsewhere. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page, and you can find it down in the video description below if you're interested. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.